The three best words in all of YouTube. Mock Draft Monday. We're back with another Mock Draft Monday. Make sure to comment Mock Draft Monday down below. I'm going to be leaving those little hearts on all of those comments today. Also, shout out to everyone here for watching the channel all year long. I want to thank you guys all for the continued support as we are at the end of the regular season and the draft cycle is really kicking into gear now. And in this 2025 NBA mock draft, we have a lot to cover. I hope you guys do enjoy the content. If you do, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content, especially if you're new. There's a lot that you do not want to miss out on over the next 2+ months leading up to the 2025 NBA draft. Mock draft preview here, very quick and simple. The draft order is based on the end of season standings. This will change. Next week, we will do a mock draft Monday with a lottery simulation. So stay tuned for that. That's one of the reasons you want to subscribe. And another reason to subscribe is because we're going to have other NBA draft lottery videos later this week. I'm going to do a lot of different things with the NBA draft lottery this year. I've been planning it for about a whole year now at this point. I've had a lot of ideas since last year's draft lottery that I wanted to implement on the channel. So stay tuned for all of that. I'm sure you guys are excited. For those who've been watching the channel for a while, you know sometimes that some of these innovative ideas end up being quite fun and kind of community centered and do a lot of different things. So I'm really excited for that. I hope you guys do enjoy. Let's get into it here with the first overall pick belonging to the Utah Jazz. And I am extremely excited for what that could look like here for Utah specifically. First of all, gotta love the new purple rebrand. That's going to look great. And if they do ultimately get the first overall pick, which they have a 14% chance of having, and they have a draft floor at pick number 5, the Jazz are in a really great spot. They're going to be picking top 5 in this year's draft. They have a great opportunity here to implement more talent to their rebuild. And specifically, if they have the first overall pick, it's not going to be a huge shock or surprise who we have them selecting. First overall, the Utah Jazz select forward Cooper. Cutter, someone who has worked as a post-up player, has won in isolation, pushes the ball well in transition, obviously has really grown and evolved as a passer as well in the last. He has lived up to that every single inch of expectation I had for him. He has exceeded even and surpassed, and I think for Utah specifically here, getting a player first overall, first time in franchise history, would be huge for them. And getting it in a draft class like this where you have such a prized prospect, a prized product at the very top, It's a no-brainer home run decision. Now, for any skeptics who say, well, maybe Cooper Flagg will stay in school, I can pretty much guarantee you he will not. It has nothing to do with his rookie scale contract. Obviously, NIL is still an attractive route for him. What it has to do is getting through his rookie scale contract as quick as possible so that 4+ years from now, he's signing a supermax rookie contract extension, one that has the escalators up to 270 to whatever it might be, 360, $400 million, whatever that number ends up looking like. Not sure yet. As the NBA cap grows, that number will continue escalating as well. But Cooper Flagg's going to make a ton of money in his NBA career. It makes no sense to go back to school. No agent, no representative will advise him to do that because, again, it doesn't make any sense. He's going to make a ton of money in his NBA career, way more money than he ever could make in college. And doing it in Utah with a team that already has a lot of pieces in place is a really, really great start for him in his NBA career. Moving on to pick number 2, the Washington Wizards. What a game 82 it was for them. Bub Carrington, a game winner on an unbelievable float, high bank, whatever you want to call it, shot that was just incredible. Where moments before that, Josh Christopher gets an over and back violation. Pretty much all things had to go right for Washington to win that game. And I'm sure some Wizards fans aren't happy about that because it did change their potential lottery odds just a little bit. Not really the odds for the first overall pick. They'll still have a 14% chance, but it did alter their draft floor from being at worst 5th overall now to being at worst 6th overall, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it could make or break who you end up getting on draft night. So it'll be something to monitor leading up to the NBA draft lottery this year. But 2nd overall, I have the Washington Wizards here selecting guard Dylan Harper, son of NBA legend Ron Harper. Now you get a guard who can really cook in the pick and roll, pick and pop, pick and short roll game with him moving forward, which really excites me. Moving on to pick number 3, the Charlotte Hornets here now, a team that I think is extremely fascinating to talk about. There's going to be your camp where they say, well, if you're Charlotte, you got to swing for upside. This franchise hasn't been good for quite some time. You maybe look at Ace Bailey. And then there's the kind of more logical side of things, in my opinion, where you look at, okay, what tools and skills does this team not have? And, you're going to see it on Draft Night on ESPN. It's going to say needs, and it'll say small forward, or it'll say shooting guard. That's not what NBA GMs are looking at. That's not what front office is looking at. They need, and if they are, they're doing it wrong. So I'm almost certain no team in the league is thinking that at all. What they're thinking is, okay, we need a point of attack defender. We need someone who has great mobility skills as a big man. We need someone who can be a playmaking hub for our offense. We need someone who can do this, that, or the other thing. And it's pointed, specific things that this team needs and this offense or defense specifically needs. And for Charlotte specifically, I think taking a two-way upside player here, 3rd overall, not someone in Ace Bailey where you have to kind of imagine that a little bit more, but someone who has some of those feasible, functional tools to be a really impactful, especially defender. 3rd overall, I had the Charlotte Hornets here selecting VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. The Bahamas guard is someone who I think could be really, really, really good as a two-way player in the NBA. He's not the biggest prospect. He doesn't have this crazy elite being a useful team defender as a helper. Very rare do you get a player, especially, in the top 3, you're usually drafting for offensive upside. Someone like VJ Edgecombe, I think, has really unique defensive upside, and then the offensive flashes are there as well. Like I mentioned, there's moments where he does split in the pick and roll, or his handle, he showcases something you don't typically see from him on film, whether it's a unique behind the back dribble to get to a certain spot on the floor, or he kind of flashes some of his D-cell game offensively, which, there's rumblings and there's moments where you see those things. Now, can he put it all together? That's going to be the big question. Can he be, an all-star caliber guard? There's some people comparing him to Dwayne Wade. I don't know if I see all of that, but I understand at least the ideology of, hey, this is a two-way guard who can make plays as a shot blocker, can be an impactful team defender and point of attack defender, while also having some of that offensive upside as a slasher, cutter, and transition nightmare threat. And I think for Charlotte, looking at winning ways, trying to improve your team, Edgecombe checks a lot of those boxes of things they don't presently have on their roster currently. Pick number 4, the New Orleans Pelicans, a very tricky situation to mock for. Obviously, they have needs. Last year, they drafted Yves Missi. He ended up being a very, very strong pick for the Pelicans with where they were able to select him. But now 4th overall, after trading away Brandon Ingram, you're going to look at some of those positional needs a little bit with, hey, they need a wing, they need a forward, and specifically, if you're envisioning a way to replace Brandon Ingram, you're looking at shot making, shot creation, someone who can handle the ball a little bit and is looking to score the rock. And I think for New Orleans specifically, they already kind of have that internally with Trey Murphy. I'm very high on Trey Murphy's upside. I thought he was a tremendous prospect. I thought he got completely underdrafted in his draft class. So that will be a large part of that offensive creation. But I also think the Pelicans as a franchise as a whole are going to be looking for long-term upside. And for a boom or bust type of pick here, 4th overall, I have them selecting forward/wing Ace Bailey out of Rutgers. And this should be no that player out of him. There is significant two-way upside. He's been a tremendous positional rebounder. He obviously has great athletic traits. He puts the word air in Arius Bailey, and you can kind of harness all of these tools and traits that he has, and with the right skill development, the right attention to detail on footwork and balance, and if he gets a little bit stronger, gets a stronger, especially lower body. Everyone thinks about lifting weights, getting your shoulders and arms and your core all jacked up. I think core strength is going to be really important for him too, but I'm talking about his lower base, how strong are his legs, his quads, and his calves. I think those are things that can definitely help him kind of hold his driving lines a little bit better and play a little bit more on balance and hold his space better, something he struggled with a bit in college, and even at times before that when he was playing in high school yet. So for me, with Ace Bailey, I do think there's a lot of upside here. I think there's a lot of work that has to go into really kind of channel that upside and potential. But fourth overall, I think New Orleans could be a team that definitely values that kind of risk and that kind of reward upside, taking him fourth overall in the 2025 NBA draft. Moving on to pick number 5, the Philadelphia top Sixers have this pick right now. Now, we're going to talk about NBA draft lottery odds in future videos like I promised, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. But the top Sixers here do have this pick in this mock draft. So 5th overall, where do I have the Sixers going? This continues to be one of the hardest selections to mock in my mock drafts, and that's for good reason. One, the Sixers could definitely look to trade this pick, right? So we don't even for sure know if they're going to be holding on to this selection. They could look to either use it in conjunction with Paul George's contract or do something to kind of shake this team up. They definitely need some reinvigoration. But after the success of drafting Jared McCain last year, I do think keeping this pick ultimately makes the most sense. Now, they could look at a wing scoring type in Trey Johnson out of Texas, or they could look at a big man out of either Duke or Maryland. And ultimately in this mock draft, I have landed on center/forward Derik Queen from Maryland. And I think for Derik Queen Embiid's impact, right? But I do think when Embiid's out of the game, you could play Queen and try and run similar actions, similar sets, and find some success that way. We've also seen Queen thrive playing off of other bigs where, he does move his feet pretty well. You look at this. On going with another wing shooter, especially since your backcourt's already a little smaller with, both Maxey and McCain. you might have to look at other options and other ways to build up this team long term. And maybe you're buying high on the upside of Derik Queen, the free throw rate, the potential growth as a stretch big man who can put the ball on the deck, trigger into dribble handoffs, do a variety of different things for you. I continue to be very high on Derik Queen. I like him a lot as a prospect, and I think the 76ers, if they do take him 5th overall, would be very, very happy with the overall results of their two big lineups if they do play Queen and Embiid together moving forward. Moving on to pick number 6, the Brooklyn Nets, a landing spot that I've really liked a lot for Derik Queen in this draft process because of the DHOs in Jordi Fernandez's offense. Well, that's not available here, but the Nets do already have some bigs in place. Day'Ron Sharpe, obviously. You look at Noah Clowney, a front court member, and then obviously Nick Claxton too. Maybe the Nets keep their front court in place. We'll see what happens with Cam Johnson as well. But this is an opportunity for the Nets to maybe get some scoring punch and specifically perimeter shooting punch to put around their front court if they do keep things kind of intact there. The Nets are slated to have cap space this offseason as well. They could definitely be a unique landing spot for free agents, and they could try and quickly build this thing up, and this pick here at 6th overall would definitely help them too if they go this direction. 6th overall, I have the Brooklyn Nets here selecting wing Trey Johnson out of Texas, an absolute the total shutdown of Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, and the eventual downfall of the Crimson Tide in the NCAA tournament this year. That game was the absolute available, 8th overall here. But for a team like San Antonio that already has so much offensive creation and upside with Wembanyama, Fox, obviously you look at Castle and his progression line and what that could look like, and Devin Vassell, someone who I still remain fairly high on overall. I think 8th overall, this is a home run option here for the San Antonio Spurs. And Knueppel fits in immediately on day one, plays 20 to 25 minutes as a rookie, and is extremely impactful for them in a winning way. Pick number 9, the Houston Rockets here. This pick just climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed because the Phoenix Suns did not end the season well. If you've been watching the channel for a couple of years, you know I have been screaming from the mountaintops that the Phoenix Suns are not going to be good long term, and clearly the Houston Rockets believed it too when they made the trade for the Suns pick. This is an absolute home run outcome for the Houston Rockets. If anything, the pick that I thought was going to be the worst of the 3 picks they got from via Phoenix, I thought the 2025 pick was likely going to be the worst one. Well, here it is in the top 10, very likely. And the Rockets, you know, they have odds to get the first pick. So we'll see what happens with that. Could you imagine Cooper Flagg in Houston? Oh my goodness. Nonetheless, though, 9th overall, I have the Houston Rockets here, selecting forward Noah Essengue out of Ratiopharm, someone who right now I project mainly to be a play finisher, someone who is an adept baseline cutter, baseline operator, shoots from the corner quite well, and playing in Germany, playing off of Ben Seraph, found a ton of success as a transition finisher, someone who was a hit-ahead kind of transition threat for Ratiopharm, but also someone who is a reliable catch-and-shoot option, attack closeouts, and has the physical gifts and tools to be successful in that way. Now, again, I talked about contact balance with Ace Bailey. I compared that to Cooper Flagg. Noah Essengue, who's ultimately like the exact same age as Cooper Flagg, both of them basically 18 and a half years old on draft night. Noah Essengue is very, very skinny, very, very slight, and unlike Cooper Flagg, does not have elite contact balance, does not have a very strong base to him where he's able to play into contact, play off of bumps, play out of stride stops. There's a lot of areas where Essengue still has a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to develop, and that's a good thing, right? If you're Houston, you're looking at this as a developmental piece. Now, it's very likely the Rockets could trade this pick, right? And they very well might. But for me, if I'm looking at Houston and looking at them making a decision, you're thinking long, athletic, lengthy player who can help them as a two-way guy, offensively, being a play finisher, someone playing off of the Amen Thompson, off of Alperen Sengun, off of Jalen Green, off of Fred VanVleet, and then defensively, someone who has that length, size, that combination with athleticism to still be a positive, impactful player defensively for them. You know, I do think trading this pick does make a ton of sense, especially if it's in a package for a true, real star player, whether that be a Giannis Antetokounmpo, whether that be a Devin Booker. We'll see what that ultimately looks like. I really hope it's not for Kevin Durant. If you're a Rockets fan, you should not want any of these draft picks associated in a trade for Kevin Durant. You shouldn't want a trade for Kevin Durant really at all, honestly, in my opinion. But you know, that'll be a hot take. Not everyone's going to agree with that. I understand why. You know, Kevin Durant still is a big name and a great player, but I wouldn't be trading for a 37-year-old if I was the 2 seed in the West with how young this Rockets team is. I would be very content on either making a trade for someone in their mid to late 20s, like a Devin Booker, someone who's in their very early 30s, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, or keeping this core together and drafting and developing more players to ultimately replace guys you ultimately do lose at the expiration of their rookie contracts, because that might be what ultimately does happen here to Houston with a few of their young guys. Pick number 10, the Portland Trailblazers here now. And at the end of the top 10 here, the Trailblazers, what an interesting decision. You know, obviously they keep Joe Cronin. I don't think that was a terrible choice. You know, I think with all the cards he was dealt when he took over the job, has done an okay job. I don't understand extending Chauncey Billups. You know, Blazers fans are going to point to improvement. I mean, yeah, I would hope your team improves as your top 10 picks get a little bit older. Like, that's kind of the bare minimum expectation. They haven't been great in a lot of areas still as a team, and sometimes the minutes distribution is not in a way that I like at all. And I know some Blazers fans agree with me, some don't, and that's okay. But 10th overall, I have the Portland Trailblazers here selecting forward Collin Murray-Boyles from South Carolina, someone who had a huge impact this year for the Gamecocks. They were actually a very, very good competitive team when he was on the court, and they were terrible when he was off the floor. And I think for Portland specifically, you're looking at someone who can kind of bring that level of impact to your front court. Playing off of Donovan Clingan, I think, is a really unique fit. I talked about this in my last mock draft, about how if Collin Murray-Boyles doesn't land with a true stretch big man who shoots a ton of threes, what might help is if he plays off of a playmaking hub big man who operates out of delay action, playing off the top of the key. And for Collin Murray-Boyles, someone who is so adept at scoring in the paint, being a two-point scorer and a connector offensively with his own playmaking feel and vision, I think the combination of Clingan and CMB could actually be really quite good in Portland. Now, you guys know how much I value three-point shooting. I think three-point shooting is so important in today's game. The reality, though, is the draft is lagging behind. Teams don't understand that quite yet. A lot of NBA draft connoisseurs don't understand that yet. We continue to talk about the draft with the idea that shooting isn't important. You draft all these toolsy players, you draft all the upside guys before the guys who are really good at putting the ball in the hoop, before the guys who are really good at shooting. And that's why players like Baylor Shireman and all these other guys in recent years get underdrafted. Guys who end up being extremely valuable players and extremely valuable pieces end up carving out real NBA careers because they can shoot the ball. And it's one of the most important things. Everybody knows that. Everybody talks how the NBA game is so reliant on three-point shooting, but then we get through the top 10 of the draft and we haven't really drafted a lot of three-point shooters. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I obviously understand upside and connectivity, two-way play, all that, but Collin Murray-Boyles, I think, even though the three-point shot. Well, listen, I didn't mean to try and turn this into a little bit of a rant. Collin Murray-Boyles is a great player. Had a 63% true shooting percentage this year, but he shot 26.5% on threes on 1.1 attempt a game. So his three-point rate is basically like 10%. It's just not very existent. It's not great, but his free throw rate's elite, 55.6%. Like he's a very good player. So that's kind of the trade-off here is like for Portland, I would love for them to have a four who can really shoot the ball. It's hard to get those guys. So that's why, you go with someone like Collin Murray-Boyles here, someone with playmaking feel can be connective into your team. I definitely don't think it's a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think shooting continues to be something that is heavily undervalued in NBA draft discourse, especially. Now remember here, teams picking 11 through 14 are subject to potentially change, not guaranteed that they will, but very likely could as a result of the play-in tournament. So this is the end of the year mock draft. Again, I hope you guys are enjoying so far, but just remember 11 through 14 here very well could change because of the play-in. One of those teams is the Miami Heat, and their pick is actually lottery protected, owed to Oklahoma City. If the Heat do end up making the playoffs as the 10 seed in the Eastern Conference, they could send their pick to Oklahoma City. So if you're a Thunder fan, you're low-key rooting for the Miami Heat to make the playoffs this year, and you could get pick 15 in this draft. We'll see what happens, but 11th overall, assuming Miami doesn't win 2 consecutive games in the play-in, the Miami Heat here select guard Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma. This is a huge home run swing type of pick for the Miami Heat. Jeremiah Fears is someone who at times this year struggled, never really put the consistency together as an offensive scorer of the basketball that I would have liked to see for him to justify a top 5-ish pick, but some people still have him in that range. Now, he did average 17 points a game and scored the ball a lot, but the true shooting percentage, 56%, it's not terrible at all, especially for a reclassified guard, someone who came into college a year earlier than he was expected to. He was effective, but you look at his actual breakdown, a lot of that is because of the free throw numbers. He shot over 6 free throws a game. That can be indicative of some upside, a 51.8% free throw rate. Very, very attractive for a guard prospect. But you look at his 2-point percentage. He shot just 50.5% on twos. Then you must be thinking, oh, well, if he's a lottery guard, he probably shot really well from three. 28.4% on threes in the college game on 4 3-point attempts per game. So while the volume scoring is there, the efficiency as an actual scorer from the field isn't quite there. Now, he made up for that a lot in college with his free throw rate, something that definitely could aid him in his development in the NBA, and he is still extremely young. So listen, all of these analytics, all of these numbers that I share in these mock drafts, they are not fully indicative of what I believe on these prospects. I'm working on my first official big board. I like to be extremely thorough. I don't want to just throw out 25 big boards a year just so you guys have something to watch. Like, if I post a big board, it's really legit. So that's why I'm a little bit more hesitant on sharing a big board throughout the course of the year, because I don't want 25 different opinions of what I thought on the prospects out. But in these videos, when I share these analytics, I'm sometimes sharing the upside components. Sometimes I'm sharing the, hey, I'm a little hesitant on this, or I'm a little worried about this, or this is a little bit of a red flag. Now, it's not, again, fully indicative of what I truly, fully believe. I don't think Jeremiah Fears is a bad prospect. I was a little surprised he fully declared without the option to withdraw his name. He decided to forego all of his remaining college eligibility. I thought he could have really benefited by going back for a sophomore season. But clearly his camp, his agent, everyone believes that he's going to be drafted in the lottery. I agree with that as well. So, even though I think developmentally he could have really set himself up for success by going back to school for another year, 11th overall, Miami here gets a guard who they would be comfortable putting the ball in his hands moving forward, and life post Jimmy Butler gets a little bit more fun. And when you have a Hall of Fame name like Jeremiah Fears, you might just find the success you're looking for in your NBA career. Moving on to pick number 12. So the Dallas Mavericks, their loss in game 82 of the regular season to the Memphis Grizzlies actually bumped their pick up a couple of spots potentially here to pick number 12. They are the 10th seed out in the Western Conference. Obviously could make the playoffs through the play-in, but they have an uphill battle to get there. So 12th overall, the Dallas Mavericks here. I have selecting guard Kasparas Jakucionis out of Illinois, and I think this is a home run selection for the Dallas Mavericks, all things considered, after trading away Luka Doncic. Good things shouldn't happen to bad franchises. And as a Mavericks fan, I am licensed to say that. Kasparas Jakucionis would be a really good outcome for the Dallas Mavericks. If he's still available when their pick comes up, they need to run this pick to the podium. This is the type of ball handler, decision maker who could be really additive into their overall offensive context. At times, and this is something I've echoed throughout Anthony Davis's career, given the way he plays and the areas of the floor he occupies, sometimes it's hard to consistently get his offensive impact maximized because he doesn't constantly have the ball. I think having a player like Kasparas Jakucionis who's very pointed with the ball in his hands, understands what your team needs to do to try and generate good offense, this is the kind of player who could be really additive to a roster with Anthony Davis and Derik Lively and PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Now the Mavericks could also be a team that looks to use this pick in a trade, maybe for cough Kevin Durant, cough Nike. The Dallas Mavericks, though, if they do have this pick and they can make a selection like Kasparas Jakucionis, someone who can comfortably handle the ball for them. And honestly, one thing that I really was frustrated by during his time at Illinois, the team just didn't have a lot of ball handlers around him, a lot of really sound, good decision makers. So there would be possessions where Jakucionis goes to the corner or he's playing off the wing without the ball. And the offense just never really flowed. And they didn't find opportunities to swing the ball, get it into his hands, have him attack closeouts and make plays out of that. And I think playing next to Kyrie Irving long term, assuming the Mavericks do keep Kyrie Irving, and he rehabs well from his ACL injury and is back for the Mavericks at some point in time in the hopefully not too distant future, I think Kyrie plus Anthony Davis is enough offensive scoring gravity and this unique offensive combination where Jakucionis can play off of those guys a little bit more than he was able to for the Fighting Illini this past year, find more success playing off the ball while still being a successful on-ball player with a really high assist rate, some really unique passing skills, and some very intriguing long-term offensive upside as a step-back three-point shooter as well. He's not Luka Doncic, but this pick does move Dallas forward. He's not Luka Doncic, but this pick does move Dallas forward in the short and long term. Pick number 13, the Chicago Bulls here now, another team that is just stapled into that play-in mix. Obviously, as of late, they've been getting really strong contributions from their guards. Modest Buzelis, I need to definitely give him a name drop here. He's been playing some really fun basketball as of late. The high gathers, the low gathers, some really unique on-ball skills. Kind of reminded me of what he looked like at Sunrise Christian a few years ago, kind of playing point forward for his high school team. It's been a lot of fun to watch him in his rookie season for Chicago. So I think if you're a Bulls fan, there's a lot to be optimistic about moving forward. 13th overall, I have them selecting forward Carter Bryant out of Arizona. I think for me, you're looking at a player who can naturally slot in, fit in pretty well with this young core nucleus of talent. And Carter Bryant, someone who only had about a 16.1, 16.2% usage rate, if I remember correctly, for Arizona. You're looking at, a player who, with such a low usage rate, very comparable to Khaman Maluach, who was a screen-setting, rim-rolling big man. You might say, well, what's the upside here? What's the real intrigue for drafting a young player without a ton of usage? in the college game. And for Chicago, it's specifically that you're not having to imagine him in a role. You already know what he looks like playing a certain style of basketball. And I think for the Bulls specifically, slotting him in next to Josh Giddey, slotting him in next to Kobe White, you kind of already know that Carter Bryant's going to be an effective catch and shoot guy. You know, he can attack closeouts. He's athletic enough defensively to hold his own for sure, something, you know, Arizona relied on him to do quite a bit. And then he also is this really unique cutter and transition play finisher. And you look at the pace the Bulls played with this year, something that has been an ever-improving situation for them under Billy Donovan in the last couple of years, where the pace has continued to tick up and up and up. And having Josh Giddey obviously helps that too. I think Carter Bryant can be a really unique transition play finisher for them, a cutter out of the baseline, someone who just gives you these variety of functional tools to help your half-court offense just ever so slightly as an off-ball exclusive player almost. And while it's not the most sexy pick, it's not the, oh, this guy's got future superstar written all over him at pick number 13, it's a pick where you're saying, this guy functionally fits into our team. He fits off of some of our other young core players. We're going to probably pay Josh Giddey. Kobe White looks like a huge cornerstone part of our franchise moving forward. Modest Buzelis is someone who's going to warrant some touches and handling opportunities. We don't need another guy who siphons those opportunities away from our current players. We need someone who is an additive fit piece next to those guys, and that's where I think Carter Bryant makes a ton of sense. 13th overall for Chicago. Pick number 14, the Atlanta Hawks here. Now remember, this pick is top 12 protected via the Sacramento Kings. So either the Kings could make the playoffs through the play-in, and then this pick will outright go to Atlanta since it would be a playoff selection, or it could theoretically move up in the lottery and the Kings could hold that pick, which would be crazy. Hawks fans know all about those picks moving up, don't they? To get Zachary Rasheer, who's been super awesome for them this season. But nonetheless, 14th overall, I have the Atlanta Hawks here selecting guard Jase Richardson from Michigan State. This has been kind of a common theme pick over the last couple of mock drafts or so, and I do really like the fit. Jase Richardson was a low 20s usage rate guard for Michigan State this year. Someone who, as the year went on, kind of gained and garnered more opportunity, right? Got added to the starting lineup. Started to have some real success with the ball in his hands, was given more on-ball screen opportunities where he's handling the rock, making decisions. But we also, throughout the year, got to see him in an off-ball role. How successful was he as a spot-up shooter? How successful was he playing off of handoffs, playing off the catch? And I think that combination, that culmination is really, really valuable. I talked a lot about that last year in the 2024 NBA draft with a guard in Reed Sheppard, who was a top 3 pick by the Houston Rockets. And while everyone kind of fixated on what's Reed Sheppard's potential as an on-ball player, I continuously talked about how it's really, really good, especially in today's NBA, to have a player who can do both things, who can handle the ball, can play make, can handle in ball screens, can do all those things on the ball, but also is beneficial to your team when he doesn't have the ball. And with how heliocentric the NBA is and how, star-driven the league has become, especially in the last 15, 20 years, having players who do a little bit of everything successfully for an offense, it's unreplaceable. Think about how valuable Austin Reeves is to the Lakers. LeBron's out. Oh, Austin Reeves, you're running 20 pick and rolls tonight. Oh, we have LeBron and Luka tonight? Well, guess what, Austin Reeves, you're not going to run 20 pick and rolls. You'll run 8, but then you're also going to cut. You'll do this. You'll do that. You'll be successful. You can attack closes. Like Jase Richardson, this is the type of player that just finds success and finds impact. While everyone else in the draft community, while everyone else hyper fixates on upside and, oh, how many pick and rolls can this guy run? And is he an isolation player? What can he, finding players who can fit is so much more important right now in today's game. And I think you look at how load-centric Trae Young is for this team, how dominant of the ball he can be, and how Jalen Johnson is obviously such a great fit off of that. You don't need 5 players who can be high-volume ball handlers. Jase Richardson is the great example of, hey, if Trae Young's getting blitzed or if he's getting a ton of ball pressure bringing the ball up the court, Jase Richardson can take some of that pressure off of him without eliminating Trae Young from the game, without making Trae Young have to play different than he is as a player. And I think that's where the real benefit is here, 14th overall for Atlanta. Pick number 15, the San Antonio Spurs, who went with Knueppel at pick number 8, now have this pick from the Atlanta Hawks from the DeJounte Murray trade. Another example of how non-additive players don't always help your team. DeJounte did not fit well in Atlanta, so there's another selling point for Hawks fans on Jase Richardson. Nonetheless, for San Antonio, after grabbing a wing type player in Knueppel at number 8, I have the Spurs here at 15, selecting center Asa Newell from Georgia. And I think a lot of Spurs fans would be very, very happy and optimistic with this kind of selection, giving the Spurs another big rim finisher, giving them a little bit more lineup flexibility. Obviously, especially during his rookie season, Wembanyama did not thrive playing as the 4. There are a few things I need to point out about that, though. One, it was his rookie season, specifically very early on in his rookie season. And secondly, he was playing with Zach Collins, which is not a good big man partner to play with. Asa Newell, someone who has some touch, has also stepped out to the three-point line a bit in his college career, hasn't found the most success playing in that way, but definitely someone who has thrived around the rim, has a 63% two-point percentage, shot over 61% from a true shooting standpoint, and played within a good usage rate without being like a super, oh my gosh, look at his high usage rate. Like 23.5% usage rate for a college player is not incredibly high. Like it really isn't. So he was an incredibly productive offensive player because of how much he hit the offensive glass, averaged over 3 offensive rebounds per game. So this is one of those, unique fits where I could see him succeeding with Victor Wembanyama while also giving the Spurs someone who, the 15 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game that Wembanyama is not on the court. Asa Newell is your kind of, pseudo backup 5, whatever you want to call it. And I think with that in mind, the Spurs come into this draft, they get an elite off-the-catch player in Knueppel, someone who can really, really accentuate their star pieces. And then they get someone who gives them lineup flexibility, lineup versatility with Asa Newell, who, you're going to envision him being an 18 to 22 minute per game guy anyway. And you can, have 6 of those minutes be with Wembanyama, 12 of those minutes come without Wembanyama, whatever that ends up looking like. I think there's a realistic line of success here that the Spurs can kind of toggle into with, some nights it makes sense to play Asa Newell more, some nights it makes sense to play him a little bit less. But really, you're trying to round out your rotation a little bit, address a long-term need, which is a backup center spot for you. And you're getting someone who's really athletic, really applicable in terms of fitting onto this team because of his work on the offensive glass, and also the touch around the rim, which has been very, very strong, plus some real defensive versatility, which could be additive as well to the Spurs roster moving forward for sure. Pick number 16, the Orlando Magic here now, a team that, has a little bit of work to do yet to get into the playoffs. They have not locked up a spot. They're obviously in the play-in. Very likely they could make it though, right? So Orlando 16th overall, unique team, a team that I think definitely needs more three-point shooting. That's what we're going to address here. Forward Liam McNeeley out of UConn is the 16th overall pick to the Orlando Magic here in this mock draft. And I think for Liam McNeeley, for the first thing I want to say is you have to look at his long-term track record as a shooter. He did not have the best season at UConn. I've talked at length about why that is. The Huskies don't have the best collection of playmakers, specifically life post Klingon, post Stephon Castle, post Tristan Newton. They lost like their top 3 assist guys from last year, and they didn't really replace that. In the portal, they didn't do as well as I think they would have liked to. And while they did get some good recruits from this past high school class, they didn't get like this elite point guard who kind of took over that playmaking responsibility. Kind of fell on the shoulders of Alex Caravan and, kind of playmaking by committee. And while their offense was good, it wasn't as elite as we've seen in the past. And someone like Liam McNeeley, I think, really, faltered because of that. Liam McNeeley, had he went to Duke or to some other school like Michigan or Michigan State where he was playing off the ball next to playmaking, would have found a ton more success, in my opinion. So, and it's crazy to say that because UConn was so good for a few years, but they lost so much talent to the NBA draft because of that. So, for Orlando specifically, you're looking at, okay, Liam McNeeley, we're not envisioning him being a creator of offense for us. We're looking at how does he fit off of Paulo Banchero, off of Franz Wagner, off of, Jalen Suggs, off of Anthony Black. And I think the upside here is pretty immense when you go back to his Montverde Academy film. There's a lot to love and there's a lot to be optimistic about because of Liam McNeeley's talent level, his shot-making prowess that we've seen on display for years now at this point in time. When you go back to his high school film, yeah, he didn't have the best season at UConn. You also still have an idea that this guy's a respectable three-point shooter. He was a zone breaker for Montverde Academy, and for UConn, not everything clicked for their team as a whole. Liam McNeeley can still be a positive, impactful player, rebounded the ball pretty well. I think, defensively you are looking at limitations, but Jamal Mosley's a great coach, especially on the defensive end of the floor. This team needs more shooting. They have the defensive infrastructure around McNeeley to make him work defensively. I think this is a very, very strong pick for the Magic at number 16. Pick number 17, the Minnesota Timberwolves here via the Detroit Pistons. This pick will either be 17 or 18. The way it would be 18 is if one of Memphis or Golden State does not make the playoffs because of the play-in tournament. It would move down a spot, but very likely this pick will be at number 17. And 17th overall, the Minnesota Timberwolves here selecting guard/forward Egor Demin from BYU. And I think for Minnesota specifically, this is a very interesting landing spot for Egor Demin for a few reasons. The Timberwolves have really utilized lengthy playmaking forward/guard sort of in the last couple of years. Obviously, they signed Joe Ingles. He didn't really have a big role on the team this year. In fact, most games didn't have a role at all. But you look back a couple of years ago, the presence of Kyle Anderson as a point forward, can push the ball in transition, can be a playmaking hub in the middle of your offense against zones. Egor Demin, at BYU, he was like a point guard. Pretty much everyone's envisioning him right now as an on-ball player. And I just think you're going to get diminished results if you do that. He's not a great three-point shooter. He's pretty much afraid of contact. He doesn't play into contact. He doesn't trust his handle enough against blitzes and against aggressive hedges. I have concerns about envisioning Egor Demin as a lead point guard. And specifically for a team like Minnesota, you don't have to do that. You can look at him as this kind of combo playmaker where does he bring passing feel? Does he bring passing vision, accuracy? Does he bring, size and positional playmaking? He for sure does. He just doesn't have to do it as a point guard. Anthony Edwards is going to be your lead guard. Rob Dillingham's obviously someone they drafted who they believe in long-term is going to have the ball in his hands a decent amount for them. Naz Reid can handle it and make plays for a bit for them. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's another guy. And I think Nickeil is really the perfect player for Egor Demin to kind of watch offensively over the next few years, assuming that they're able to retain Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You're looking at him learning from Nickeil and learning how to play an off-ball kind of combo role where at times, is he responsible as a playmaker? Can he cut and dish? Can he run a pick and roll here and there? Definitely. And that's where Egor Demin's strengths could be really heavily accentuated, as if he becomes, instead of a 25 pick and roll per game guy, if you start envisioning him as like a 4 or 5 pick and roll per game guy, which clearly limits his ceiling. But based on what I'm saying, you can clearly tell I'm not super fond of his long-term ceiling. Yes, the positional size is great. The other analytics don't suggest he's going to be a great player. Really low free throw rate. Terrible, not a great free throw percentage. He actually had a net rating that was negative this year. The only other player so far in this draft that has been drafted with a negative net rating was Ace Bailey, 4th overall. So, there's a lot of work yet to be done for Egor Demin. He had a 50.9% true shooting percentage, 41% from the floor this year. Did have a really, really high assist rate though, 34.6%, but that also came with a very high 21.9% turnover rate. So the numbers, again, they don't tell the full story. For me, it's all about skill evaluation first and then getting the numbers down after. Egor Demin, I am very intrigued with because of his playmaking feel and size and vision and specifically the velocity with which he passes the ball, something I think is really understated about him as a prospect right now. But I just don't see him being a point guard in the NBA. I think he's a point forward, handle the ball a little bit, run a few pick and rolls here and there, cut, be connective. And I think for Minnesota, that's a team where he can learn to do those things and hopefully find success in his NBA career as a result. Pick number 18, the Miami Heat here now. This pick via the Golden State Warriors. The Heat should be extremely ecstatic about the Warriors missing the 5 seed, 6 seed with the loss to the Clippers in Game 82. Moved their pickup just a little bit here up to number 18. So this selection here, I have the Miami Heat selecting forward Rasheer Fleming. So after going with Jeremiah Fears at 11, they come back with Rasheer Fleming at 18, and having addressed their point guard of the future spot with Fears, now find a big, lengthy wing who can really defend both out on the perimeter and can be impactful around the rim defensively, and someone who has been extremely successful in the college game from an offensive standpoint as a play finisher. Averaged about 15 points a game this past year for St. Joseph's. And you're looking at someone who specifically from the floor shot 53% with a 64% true shooting percentage nearly. Very strong three-point attempt rate, 45%, which is exactly kind of what you're looking for this 3-and-D wing kind of mold. And he made 39% of his threes on decent volume. Now, he did that in the A-10, the NBA is going to be a little bit of a different game. It's going to be a little bit quicker, a little bit more athletic. Rasheer Fleming does have some flaws. He struggled as a driver of the basketball. He was not the most effective half-court offensive player when it came to creating his own looks. And this is where playing with someone like Jeremiah Fears could be really beneficial for him long-term. Jeremiah Fears, someone who can create offense for others and himself. I think Fleming you're looking at as being strictly an off-ball player. There's really no offensive upside here for Fleming. Like, he's going to be a 3-and-D player. And that's okay. That's, again, part of the draft is finding players who fit, finding guys who can shoot the ball, finding guys who can stretch the floor. Now, for me, one concern I do have is, what if teams start really aggressively running him off the three-point line? Does he have the playmaking field? Does he have the driving ability to actually hurt that? I don't know at this point. I don't really trust it now. But I think landing in Miami, Heat culture, Erik Spoelstra as your head coach, we're going to see strong development for him. Hopefully in the first couple of years of his career where, I'm not saying all-star upside or all-star kind of development, but hopefully we can see growth where he becomes a passable playmaker out of live dribble scenarios and a passable finisher as a driver of the basketball. And those are the two things I'm really looking for growth from him moving forward. But right now it's pretty easy. You get him onto a team that's kind of in that playoff contention, playoff mix, put him next to other guys who can create, like a Bam Adebayo, like a Tyler Hero, and you let Rasheer Fleming do Rasheer Fleming things, which is find success off the ball, be productive in the minutes he's going to be on the floor, and impact the game in a variety of ways. And he does all of those things at a pretty respectable level for a guy coming into the NBA. Moving on to pick number 19, the Washington Wizards here now. This pick via the Memphis Grizzlies. And with this selection, after getting Dylan Harper second overall, I have the Washington Wizards here now selecting guard Ben Saraf from Ratiopharm. And you might be saying, wow, another guard, another playmaker, another decision maker. I think if you look specifically at Will Dawkins and coming from that Oklahoma City front office, the decision-making process there has really heavily valued playmaking and connectivity. And Ben Saraf is one of the better playmaking decision makers in this draft, someone who has really benefited by a heavy on-ball volume. You think back to the FIBA U18 tournament where he's playing for Israel, ended up garnering MVP honors from that tournament, and he did so by spamming middle pick and roll, by getting to spots on the floor and creating options for either himself as a scorer or for his teammates as a facilitator. And one thing specifically he does really well is his drive and kick, where he passes over the top of the defense using his positional size at about 6'6". The combination of Saraf and Dylan Harper really intrigues me. Now, both of them do have a little bit of question and concern about their three-point shot. I think Dylan Harper is going to end up being very, very good offensive. I'm not really worried about that. Ben Saraf, his shot is a little bit more streaky, but I do think ultimately I trust the volume. I trust the sample size that we have right now on him. And I trust his mechanics. I do think fundamentally he is going to be a respectable shooter in the NBA, someone who is definitely going to be a passable shooter in the NBA, someone who's not going to be a complete nothing, a non-shooter, a hesitant shooter. I don't see that in the cards for Ben Saraf. So for Washington here, you're getting this kind of combination of guys who can make reads off of a live dribble, and have solid positional size in your backcourt. Bub Carrington was already a bigger guard who can knock down pull-up jump shots and make reads with the ball in his hands. You add in Dylan Harper, who's going to be the best guard on the team. Then you draft someone like Ben Saraf. All of a sudden, you have this unique plethora, this unique trio of bigger guards who can guard up and down the lineup a little bit and can play off of each other and create for each other. It's going to be a unique thing. It's obviously going to take a little bit of time for Washington to kind of, iron out the kinks there. But all in all, I think for Washington, you're looking at long-term upside, you're looking at long-term development and potential. And Saraf, Harper, and Bub Carrington all playing together could be really, really fun for them long-term. And it also could keep them well-positioned for the draft next year, where guys like Caden Boozer, AJ Debonsa, Darren Peterson are the headliners in the 2026 NBA draft as well. Pick number 20, the Brooklyn Nets here now. This pick comes from the Milwaukee Bucks, part of the Mikal Bridges trade. And 20th overall for Brooklyn, a team that ended up taking Trey Johnson 6th overall. I now have them coming and getting that big man who they can run their offense through a bit. And that player is Danny Wolf out of Michigan, someone who can thrive as either the 4 or the 5 for Michigan. Exclusively played a ton of his minutes at the power forward spot next to Vlad Golden, where their 45 action was one of the most dominant actions in all of college basketball this year. Teams just did not have the size or talent level to disrupt Danny Wolf as a ball handler. Now, I do think there are ways in the NBA to mitigate him. I think ball pressure is going to be one thing that is going to be a real struggle for him. And if you envision him playing exclusively the 4 in the NBA, in the East, that might mean Jason Tatum's guarding him. That might mean Jaylen Brown's guarding him. That might mean Pascal Siakam is guarding him, which means some of these quicker forwards are going to be able to get under him a little bit and crowd him and make him a little uncomfortable with his handle. He is very reliant on his spin move to keep the ball safe, but the feel is there and the IQ is there. So I think for him, you're projecting some long-term growth and development. And then also for Brooklyn, you have question marks about your roster, and can you play Danny Wolf as a center? I don't know if that's going to be a very good offensive or defensive strategy long-term for your team. But this is the kind of player who, if they want to try and find ways to unlock Nick Claxton a little bit more offensively, if they want to try and find ways to help Day'Ron Sharpe offensively, continue to grow, produce, and develop, I think Danny Wolf could be an additive player into their front court. I think he fits their offensive identity and scheme. And I think for the Nets moving forward, you're looking at getting a player in the 20s here who has a really good track record of being a successful college player, multiple years in college where he was a very, very, very good player. And specifically this last year for the Wolverines really started to gain a ton of attention. And then also going into the NBA, someone who I think has a lot of tools to build off of as a capable ball handler and an impactful defender, albeit in kind of a non-traditional role in the college game. Pick number 21, the Utah Jazz, who had the first pick in this mock draft after going with Cooper Flagg. Now they have a pick here at 21, which is officially locked in. This is firmly their pick that they have via the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. And with this spot, they will take guard Nolan Traore out of France. So after going with Cooper Flagg, someone who's going to initiate a ton of offense for them, someone who's going to create a ton of offense, they do go with a high upside pick here in Traore. Now, before this draft cycle really commenced, if I told you that they walked out of this draft with Traore and Flagg, you would say, how did the Jazz get 2 top 5 picks? Now, they don't find themselves in that actual spot here, having 21st overall. Traore still being on the board makes me think Danny Ainge would look at this as an upside pick. 12 months ago, a lot of NBA draft analysts, a lot of NBA executives were starting to buzz about Nolan Traore, and there was a lot of hope and kind of expectation that Traore was going to be a top 3 pick, top 5 pick in the 2025 NBA draft. Now, that ultimately did not hold weight. Traore has had kind of a down year for himself holistically. The true shooting percentage, the efficiency as a scorer specifically is what stands out, but there are still functional tools and skills to build off of. I trust his first step quite a bit. I think as a playmaker, he's a little bit of a step behind guys like Dylan Harper in this draft class, who I think are more sound playmakers, specifically at weaponizing team defenses and using the entirety of the floor. But Traore to me is someone who I think with his downhill burst and getting to certain spots on the floor can really use the pocket well as a pocket passer, and I think could grow as a lob passer as well. So I think if you're Utah and you're looking at ways to developmentally improve your roster as it currently is internally, I think Walker Kessler catching the ball in the middle of the floor a little bit more, growing as a touch player. You look at the growth Ivica Zubac has had for the LA Clippers over the last 4 or 5 years. That's the kind of player Walker Kessler should be trying to model his game after. If he can get that little 6 foot to 8 foot push shot down, if he can master his right hook and left hook a little bit more, that's the kind of player where, Ivica Zubac can be an effective post scorer without demanding a ton of post touches. And that's where the effective play of Nolan Traore can hopefully help bring out some of that progression for someone like Walker Kessler throughout the course of an 82-game regular season. Pick number 22, the Atlanta Hawks here now. This pick via the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Hawks move up quite a bit here with this pick as well as possible. It could have been in the mid to late 20s. Actually ends up at number 22. Currently now it is part of a 4-way tie, so it's possible that this pick could slide down a little bit. We'll see what happens with the actual coin flip that helps determine where this pick ultimately resides and lands. But 22nd overall here for the Atlanta Hawks. I had them selecting forward Thomas Sorber from Georgetown, someone who had an elite defensive presence this year for the Hoyas before getting injured and missing the end of the college season. Sorber is someone who I think offensively could make some sense as well for the Atlanta Hawks with the vacance of DeAndre Hunter, who they traded away at the February 6th NBA trade deadline this year. The Atlanta Hawks now are in a position where I think looking at forwards, looking at kind of 3-4 hybrids who can bring that defensive impact while also having some of that mid-range shot creation and hopeful stretching to the three-point line makes some sense. Now, I say hopeful, and I say that on purpose here with Thomas Sorber for a reason. Sorber was not a productive three-point shooter at all. You can't even use your imagination with how poor of a three-point shooter he was. Shot 1.5 threes per game this past year for Georgetown, and made just 16.2% of them. So he was less effective as a three-point shooter than Derik Queen. He was less effective as a three-point shooter than even Collin Murray-Boyles. So this is a pick here where Atlanta is really hoping that long-term he can grow and develop as a three-point shooter. Now, he had a very, very strong free throw rate, very successful mid-range jump shooter, shot about 60% on twos this year, and still boasted a 58% true shooting percentage despite his terrible three-point efficiency. So if you're looking at the upsides and the progression here for Thomas Sorber, you're trusting the other shooting indicators where he was a solid free throw shooter, solid mid-range shooter, and you're hoping that long-term you can really bring the best out of him developmentally, and I think that's what the Hawks will look to do here, 22nd overall, after making a strong pick of Jase Richardson at number 14 earlier in this mock draft. Pick number 23, the Indiana Pacers, another team in that multi-team tie here where this pick could change spot just a little bit, but nonetheless, the Indiana Pacers here at number 23, I have going with wing Noah Penda. Playing in the L&B Pro A, Penda's been extremely productive as a two-way wing prospect, someone who really kind of emphasizes the 3-and-D aspect of the professional game, and specifically fitting into a team context. I think Indiana is a very easy landing spot to envision for Penda because of how much of the offensive creation is already shouldered by Nembhard and Halliburton and Siakam. And then obviously you have Miles Turner as kind of a play finisher, assuming the Pacers are able to retain him long term. Penda just kind of slots into a lessened role of Aaron Nesmith, and I think this is a very easy spot to imagine what Penda's role would look like. Now, this is, again, not a super high upside pick, but a pretty relatively safe floor pick. And the reason I make this kind of selection here in this mock draft for Indiana, while the Pacers have been very good once again this year after coming off of a conference finals appearance last year, Pacers very likely will make the second round of the playoffs again this season. I think at some point in time, the Pacers will be lined up to make a big trade. They have a lot of tradable contracts, TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, Obi Toppin. We'll see what happens with Miles Turner again, like I said. But at some point, they're going to have to replenish some of that depth if they do make one of those bigger kinds of trades. They have some of their draft picks under control over the next few years. They do owe still a pick out from the Siakam trade, but they're in a very well-suited position right now to strike again in the near future to continue putting talent around their star player, Tyrese Halliburton. So, Penda could be a replacement pick where you take him with the idea that in a couple of years he could be Aaron Nesmith's replacement or a core piece of a trade himself where he might be the piece with Jarris Walker or Benedict Mathurin going out the door, right? So the Pacers, I think it's all about asset accumulation, drafting a player you feel pretty confident about being able to fit into your team and being a contributor without needing the ball and without needing to play a certain kind of style to have an actual impact. And I think Penda is a very, very safe projectable player with really unique defensive tools and skills that are going to help him a ton in the NBA, guarding on and off the basketball. Pick number 24, the Orlando Magic here now. This pick via the Denver Nuggets, and I think for Orlando specifically with the 24th overall selection. After taking a wing shooter like Liam McNeeley at pick number 16, I have them here at number 24 going with guard Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida. He will be making the drive south from Gainesville down to Orlando, and I think for Orlando specifically, this is a really sensible selection given their roster needs and concerns. I talked about the need and necessity for three-point volume for this team, specifically last year in the playoffs when they went up against Cleveland. 7-game series, they came up just short. The 3 games they won in that series, they made more threes than the Cavaliers did. The 4 games they lost, they made less threes than the Cleveland Cavaliers did. Three-pointers are valuable, three-pointers are important, and for a team like Orlando who doesn't shoot enough of them and definitely does not make enough of them, Walter Clayton Jr., while he does have his flaws and deficiencies, definitely brings that component and element to Orlando's offense. And I think as a pick in the mid-20s, this is one that makes a lot of sense. You'd have obviously a good amount of fan support here for Walter Clayton Jr., selecting him here in the back end of the first round. But outside of just that fan perspective, you're looking at getting a player who actually fundamentally fits a skill set you need, which is a ball handling, shot creating, 3-point scoring guard, which is what Walter Clayton Jr. projects to be pretty safely and routinely. Pick number 25, the Oklahoma City Thunder here. Now this is a pick swap with the LA Clippers, and what a year it was for the Oklahoma City Thunder. 68 wins, one of the best seasons of all time for any NBA team. You look at their score differential this year, they were just unbelievable. And somehow yet, the rich get richer. 25th overall, you might think, oh, there's not going to be an elite prospect here. There's not going to be a guy who's just a perfect Oklahoma City Thunder here. Well, there is, because in the way the NBA draft works, good teams still get good players because they know what they're doing. 25th overall, the Oklahoma City Thunder here select forward Alex Karaban out of UConn. I guarantee you on draft night, this kid's going to be underdrafted. He's going to return much better draft value than his actual draft slot would suggest. If you get him at 25, he'll return top 20 value. If you get him at 30, he'll return top 20 value. If you get him here, there, or whatever, he's going to be more valuable than whatever his draft slot number says, because he's going to get underdrafted. The Oklahoma City Thunder here are getting a very, very good player, someone with a good wingspan, very smart player on and off the ball, on both ends of the floor, understands defensive positioning really well, knows how to play in the gaps, knows how to be a helper without overcommitting as a helper, knows when to stunt, when not to stunt, when to actually slide his full body over and be a full gap helper, put his body in the way of the offensive player, has those arms that I mentioned with that wingspan to get in the passing lanes a bit, block shots at a very good rate for a forward wing player. And then offensively, really reminds me a lot of late career Nick Batum with the ability to be a connective passer. You know, you think about Boom Boom series where ball starts in the right corner off of a kick out, and all of a sudden the ball's swinging around the perimeter. Alex Karaban's probably a part of that. He's swinging the ball, making the extra pass, kicking it one more time to an even more open shooter. And oh, by the way, if he doesn't have that extra swing pass, he just is a good shooter himself. This is like a really good role player, and I don't know why teams are going to pass on him as much as they do. Alex Karaban is definitely going to be underdrafted, but he's a really darn good player and one that's going to return very, very good value for a team drafting him. Last year, OKC stole one of my favorite players in AJ Mitchell, someone who I had as a very firm first-round grade. They grabbed him in the second round. I couldn't believe it, that he fell that far. It just made no sense. Smart teams make smart decisions. Last year it was AJ Mitchell. This year in this mock draft, I have it being Alex Karaban for Oklahoma City. Moving on to pick number 26 here, I have the Brooklyn Nets via the New York Knicks, of course. Again, part of the Mikal Bridges trade. The Nets are going to have a lot of picks over the next 8 years from that Mikal Bridges trade. This one, not so sexy, being at the end of the first round, but still a really good opportunity for the Nets, who have 4 first-round picks in this draft, 2 of them here back-to-back at 26 and 27, to improve their roster. I mentioned their cap space. They're 4 first-round draft picks. They have a lot of ways to improve their roster going into next season. And with this selection, I have them here selecting wing Adou Thiero from Arkansas. And I think this is a really, really, really good fit for the Brooklyn Nets. Specifically defensively, you're looking at someone who I think has really significant upside on the defensive end of the floor to be a real positive team defender. He's got a very strong physical frame. I think he can guard on the ball well, has very good mirror skills where he can KBIF, keep ball in front. And I think for Brooklyn, that's going to be really valuable on the ball, but where his value really lies is defensively, playing off the basketball, being a helper in the gaps. If you put him as nail help, if you put him as your low man help, where he can muck up some of the driving lanes or the passing lanes, he's got very good intuition skills, very good instincts, when to reach, where to slide his feet, where to put his arms and body and hands. Just seems to have a knack at getting his hands on the basketball, and it was really, really productive for the Razorbacks this past year in his junior year of basketball. Had a 3.4% steal rate, which is quite good, especially for a wing, and then a 2.9% block rate, which isn't elite, but for a wing player, it's again quite good. So I think all things considered, Adou Thiero is someone who I think defensively is going to make a ton of plays, be a very impactful event creator. And then also another thing I really love about him, his cutting instincts. Now, he was not an effective three-point shooter at all, but he did boast a 60.5% true shooting percentage. And it's because he has an elite free throw rate, 69.2% free throw rate, which is really, really, really good. That's an elite free throw rate. And then a 60.5% two-point percentage this year. So even though he didn't shoot a ton of threes and only shot at about a 26% clip from three, he cuts well. He's got a really great physical frame, very functional athletic tools to finish around the rim, in and above contact, and through traffic. There's a lot to love about Adou Thiero. I think right now the fact that he missed March Madness, he missed the end of the season with an injury for Arkansas, and he is a slightly older prospect who doesn't shoot threes. Earlier I went on a little mini rant about how I think three-point shooting is so important. I still agree with that, but I think Aduthiero, for some reason, is one of the prospects who's having that three-point rate held against him a little unfairly because he does so many other things really well. I think Aduthiero is going to return very, very good value for whichever team drafts him. 26th overall here. I love this for the Brooklyn Nets. I think this is a great pick for them, and an upside pick for sure, playing out of some of their handoff action and giving up more backdoor opportunities as a cutter. Pick number 27 now, the Brooklyn Nets here via the Houston Rockets. After going with Aduthiero there, they will go with wing Will Riley out of Illinois. A very different kind of wing, someone who doesn't really have that defensive playmaking rate to him that Thiero had, but someone who has more perimeter offensive talent when it comes to the handle, when it comes to the shot creation standpoint. He's not as physically gifted, he's not as toolsy as Aduthiero, but he is a couple of years younger and someone who I think really thrives in open space right now. If he continues to develop and blossom his game, this is going to be someone who spends a couple of years with the Long Island Nets, realistically, to really kind of carve out who he can be. And that's okay. A lot of these players who are going to be drafted outside of the top 5 even will spend a good amount of time with the G League teams and G League affiliates of these NBA teams, and that's okay. Will Riley's definitely going to be one of those players who needs some G League time, but you draft him to have his rights. You draft him to get a look and to really feel what he's going to be 3-4 years from now. This is not a draft pick you're making to help your team in year one, and I think for Brooklyn specifically, a team that had 4 first-round picks in this draft, you can't really afford probably the minutes and roster construction to give everyone all of, a ton of minutes in year one anyway. Now, maybe the Nets, in an effort of tanking, still give Will Riley a lot of minutes, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that they should or will. So I think for Will Riley specifically, you're looking at the shot creation standpoint. I know some of the people I talk to are really high on him and think there's a lot of upside here to build off of. I know that a lot of people believe in his shot making, kind of the big gamesmanship that they believe he had. It kind of had a rocky year for Illinois, if I'm being honest. Moments where he was losing minutes, and then toward the end of the year started to kind of rebuild that confidence, and built his numbers back up a bit as well. So for Will Riley, one of the numbers that really stands out to me on him, which was a little surprising, honestly, not something I was expecting before his freshman season of college basketball, a 1.83 assist to turnover rate, which was pretty surprising. I kind of thought he'd be a little bit more turnover prone and maybe wouldn't generate that many assists, but averaged over 2 assists per game, just 1.2 turnovers in 25.7 minutes. So was quite effective and productive when he was on the floor. As a scorer, the efficiency kind of came and went a little bit, but the three-point rate's really strong. Free throw rate's okay for a wing. So there's definitely some upside to build off of here for sure for Brooklyn. At pick number 28 now, the Boston Celtics here, another team that I think is just really, really well ran, really smart. Brad Stevens knows what he's doing, and he continues to make decisions that help Joe Mazzulla be a great coach. Joe Mazzulla loves three-pointers. He knows how to build a defense that is competitive and works, and obviously has the talent to get it done on both ends as well. So Boston here, an opportunity to continue adding talent. I love their Baylor Shireman pick last year. 28th here, I have the Celtics selecting center Alex Condon from Florida. Another really unique option for the Celtics, giving them a delay action center who can work off of handoffs, can work out of the top of the key, and is a really creative passer. And I think one thing I always harp on for Boston is the importance of rim rate and how much they're getting to the rim and how much they're deciding to shoot at the rim when they get there. One thing that they kind of struggle with from time to time is just harnessing their downhill talent. Like you think about Tatum, you go back and watch some of Tatum's Duke highlights, you like, oh my gosh, this guy's such an elite driver of the basketball. Wow. You watch Jaylen Brown at Cal, you're like, dude, this guy's an athletic freak who can get to the rim whenever he wants. And, they don't always play that way because they're such a three-point heavy team. I think Condon could help some of those other players get better free throw rates, get better rim rates, and he would harness that by his passing and playmaking. Now, he didn't average like this crazy amount of assists this season. In fact, I'm pulling it up now here. Averaged just 2.2 assists per game, but for a center, for someone who was a playmaking hub for Florida, anyone who's watched him play, he understands spacing, he understands how to play out of back cuts, and a lot of the looks he generated for Florida wouldn't always end up or result in assists, but you trust the process with the decision making he had. And I think for Boston specifically, while this isn't a huge positional need at this point in time, because they have Porzingis, they have Al Horford currently, they have Luke Cornett. I'm not sure how many minutes Khaman would log early for them, but this is a player who could definitely help their team, especially when it comes to generating more cuts, more DHOs, getting to easy rim pressure, finding advantage a little bit quicker and a little bit smoother. And I think this would all help Boston's analytic department quite a bit when it comes to their rim rate, free throw rate, and how many shots they're going to take at the rim night in, night out. Moving on to pick number 29, the Phoenix Suns here now. This pick via the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously not a trade I would have made, trading their 2031 unprotected first for 3 picks. And this is one of them, pick 29. Phoenix, I think, is in a lot of trouble. They're going to trade Kevin Durant. We'll see if Devin Booker's future is safe or not in Phoenix. We'll see. The Suns have a lot of problems and a lot of concerns, that's for sure. But 29th overall, I have the Phoenix Suns here selecting forward Nick Clifford from Colorado State. One thing that the Suns did last year was draft slightly older prospects. Ryan Dunn, a couple years in college. You look at Oso Ighodaro, multiple years in college for Marquette. Nick Clifford, an older draft prospect, right? He spent multiple years in college, a few years at Colorado, a couple of years at Colorado State. This is an older draft prospect, but one that is a very good basketball player. Very successful for the Colorado State Rams. Really kind of found his own as both a tough shot maker, shot creator for them, and kind of a do-it-all wing for them defensively as well and offensively. Like, the offense really flowed through Nick Clifford. He found a ton of success being an on-ball player, averaged about 19 points per game, 4.5 assists per game, but was very clearly overtaxed for Colorado State as well. And I think for Phoenix, if you do keep Booker and you obviously still are probably going to be stuck with Beal, like Nick Clifford kind of being, your 4th or 5th option offensively is probably a little bit smoother for what his NBA game should look like compared to what he was doing for Colorado State as the guy, the number 1 player, the man on campus, right? So I think for Phoenix specifically, looking at the recent draft strategy and history, older prospect, I think that checks a box that very likely the Suns will consider, especially with Matt Ishbia's aggressiveness to be good right now in the present day. And especially given the pressure they're under with missing the playoffs and play in this year, the Suns are in a real struggle right now. And I could see Nick Clifford being one of the ways that they look to improve their roster in the present day. Pick number 30, the LA Clippers here via the swap with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Clippers, what a season they've had, 50-win season. Remember, before the year, people were saying, oh, this is going to be a team that sends the first overall pick to Oklahoma City. Your favorite YouTuber, if it's not me, was probably saying that. I thought that was ridiculous. But 30th overall, the LA Clippers here. With this pick, I have them selecting guard LeBaron Philon from Alabama. Someone who I do think would fit the Clippers' newfound defensive identity. This year, they've been a top 10 defense all season long. Ivica Zubac should be very firmly an all-defense team member, whether it's first or second team. Doesn't really matter too much to me, but he definitely deserves to be represented on one of those 2 all-defense teams. And then you look at the impact of guys like Derek Jones Jr., Chris Dunn onto this Clippers roster. They've been really, really productive. LeBaron Philon can be an additive piece into that as well. Someone with very good athletic tools. Obviously has been called on by Alabama to be a point of attack defender. Now, the Crimson Tide weren't a great defense. That's nothing new for a Nate Oates team. They're in Alabama, but I think LeBaron Philon, you saw the defensive event creation at times this year, picking guys' pockets, getting in the passing lanes, generating transition opportunities, and then also offensively, there's a lot of optimism and hope that he can grow and blossom as a two-way player, specifically given some of the big moments he had for Alabama this year. You think about some of the big shots he hit, attacking closeouts. Now, I do have concerns about his three-point success in the NBA and if he's going to be a reliable three-point shooter or not. But one thing about the Clippers and playing around Ty Lue, they've found ways to make that work with Chris Dunn this year, where even when Chris Dunn doesn't get guarded, which is a lot of the time, they've still built an effective and efficient offense, and that's a testament to James Harden. It's a testament to Ivica Zubac's continued growth. It's a testament to how good Kawhi Leonard is when that guy's on the floor. Man, the Clippers do have some awesome players. I think LeBaron Philon can be a nice fit piece for them long term, kind of filling in that Terrence Mann role, that they traded away at the trade deadline this year. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more NBA content, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.